Good morning. The service this morning is going to be a departure from what you're used to. I'll be taking you on a slide ride through the history of Comal County Unitarian Universalist Society and Unitarian Universalists of New Braunfels, as seen through various lenses. And by the way, since Unitarian Universalism is such a tongue twister, I'm going to forego saying it every time and use the abbreviation UU. And also, I'm going to occasionally refer to us as our church. Our history is a story of faith and determination that we could make what we wanted to accomplish happen. And faith is faith in ourselves and in the future of our church. So, as I was writing this, the talk divided itself into 4 to 5 year intervals, chapters, as shown here. And I'll use these to help keep you oriented to history. Our beginning was an idea in Thea Cheshire's mind. This is Thea, our founder and matriarch. She was a political activist, a yellow dog Democrat, and evangelical Unitarian Universalist. Don't build it and they will come. Go out and get them. And a get her done kind of person. One thing she wanted to get done was to save the drive to Austin for church by starting a church here in New Braunfels. This advertisement in the Herald Zeitung was the result. 17 people responded to that invitation and met at her house. The beginning of our church, October 25th, 1995. This fledgling, still nameless group was nomadic for a while, but found a home for our Wednesday night forums, as they were called, at Faith United Church of Christ Fellowship Hall in early 1996. The Live Oak UU Church in Austin donated money for us to open a bank account. And since we needed a name for that, Comal County Unitarian Universalist Society was born. We hired a retired UCC minister, Reverend Les Pugh, to speak one Wednesday night per month. So just as we have now, we began with a mix of professional and lay-led services. And here I am inserting something that I just remembered this morning. We also had childcare when we were there. We had a room that we could have the kids in, and we had someone come every Wednesday night. And if there were no kids, we paid her $10 and she went home. She did? Oh, okay. I thought she went home. Anyway, and if there were kids, well, then she watched the kids. And at one point, we even talked about possibly extending that to RE, but that never happened. A couple of years later, in 98, we voted to join the Southwest UU Conference and the UUA, Unitarian Universalist Association. We elected our first full slate of officers and board members under recently adopted bylaws. And we became a Texas corporation. In January 1999, the Board of Trustees, in January 1999, the UUA Board of Trustees approved CCUUS as an official UUA member congregation, and we became the UU Church in New Braunfels that Thea dreamed of and was determined to create. Okay, next chapter, 2000 to 2005. We sent our first delegation to the UUA General Assembly in 2001, and church members created a banner to carry in their procession of congregations, which is a feature of GA. I knew we were going to give up. Still proudly hanging in our church today. Okay, calm down. We did the study effort required to be a welcoming congregation from 2001 to 2003, and we earned the plaque. It hangs out in our hall today. We are an LGBTQ welcoming congregation. We also made the decision in late 2001 to start Sunday morning services, an idea that had come up earlier, but now was the time. We formed a worship committee to create the order of service and arranged for renting 2 rooms at the Comal County Senior Center. We wanted to have a room for meeting and a room for religious education. We were going to make it happen. Some folks still preferred Wednesday night over Sunday, so we accommodated them by having both. We gathered our Sunday service needs in January 2002 and moved into the Senior Center. Some supplies had to be shared with our Wednesday night forums, so we became the Church of the Sacred Car Trunk as we moved between venues. Our first Sunday service was on February 3rd, 2002, with the banner prominently displayed up front. About 30 people showed up, a really good turnout, and a harbinger for the solid future of the Sunday services. Still going on today, 21 years later, without interruption. By the second Sunday, we had the lectern banner here and the beautiful chalice that was designed and commissioned by 2 church members that's here today. And here are a few scenes from our days at the Senior Center, just to contrast what we enjoy today to what we had then in both the meeting room and the children's RE. Our RE was administered by parents and volunteers at that time entirely. What a contrast to what we have today. And on October 26th of that year, the sermon was to be on the Wiccan roots of Halloween, which caused a major ruckus. We get laughter because we remember it. A Senior Center member looked up Wicca, saw its connection to witchcraft, and threatened their board with revocation of their 501c3 if they allowed that sermon to go on. They called us Saturday night and tried to get us to not present it, which we refused to do. We arrived at the Senior Center Sunday morning to find our entry door chained and padlocked. We milled around in the parking lot, extremely upset, but in the end, being determined to not allow their censorship and to go ahead and have our service. We adjourned to Thea's house for it. Our relationship with the Senior Center was rocky for a while and required some finessing to continue there. So, being tired of that, we launched a search for other venues in New Braunfels that might not be so biased, but we found nothing available to us. And believe me, we looked everywhere. Thus, we had our very first thoughts that we needed a place of our own. This memorable event, and you've heard the memory, contained both joy and sorrow. Sorry for the censorship that we experienced, but joy at seeing a possible new future for us. We really needed our own building. So back to the senior center. We had our first vision workshop in January 2003, led by a couple of folks from the Southwest Unitarian Universalist Conference. They started with an overview of the process, and then we had us meet in small groups to discuss our values, our goals as a congregation, and our vision for our future. After that, we gathered to share all of our ideas and create a final picture of who we were and where we wanted to go. A particular vision from Thea was lots of trees and greenery and windows to see it all. We have that today. So we started searching for land to build on. We were initially focused on land out in the country where we could build ourselves, since we had all the talent we needed in the church, and we would be unencumbered by city permits and inspections. That continued for many months without any success. So we started considering land or even buildings in town that might be within our budget, but we found nothing that fit both our needs and budget. Next chapter, building. Our land search ended in 2005. After fruitless searches over the previous 2 years, members Paul McGaffick and Jim Barry set out one day determined to find a property. Here. Sorry. This was the biggest step yet in our church development, but we were confident of our ability to go ahead and do it, and determined to not let fear of commitment get in our way. We arranged financing with a church member, and we completed the acquisition in June. We reviewed the paperwork, and by the way, that's Jim Barry on the left and Paul McGaffick standing up. We signed on the dotted line, and we handed over the check. The land was ours. On the 10th anniversary of the founding of CCUUS, we had a birthday party. We put up a sign announcing our future church home, and we had a land blessing ceremony. The blessing included scattering seeds to the four corners, wildflower seeds, I should say, to the four corners of the property to make it green and pretty for all of us. We declared 2006 the year of the building, starting with a fundraising house concert and dinner in January. So, for the rest of 2006 and into 2007, our long-range planning committee wrestled with possible designs for our building, getting ideas and wish lists from the congregation. In the end, we voted to pursue a design by our member architect, Dwight Micklethwaite. We also had an offer to sell the old house to be moved off the property, and we promptly accepted their $5,000 payment towards our building fund. We formed a finance committee to consider the important question of how we could raise the money to proceed. Mind you, we had a $20,000 a year budget in those days. The first step was an estimate of how much we would need to build. It was provided by Dwight, and that was a big gulp, $400,000. How are we going to raise that? The second step was a capital campaign to see how much we could raise just to start. Not enough. So after several options were considered for financing the balance, we decided on selling promissory notes with an attractive interest rate. The congregation then met to consider the scary decision to go ahead. It was debated and approved. We opened the sale of the promissory notes and added $20,000 a year of debt service to our budget. That just about doubled it in one step. But we were fully confident and determined that we would find a means to cover it. White then took on the very large task brought us of creating the detailed drawings needed for construction, soliciting bids, selecting a contractor, and supervising the whole construction process. And by the way, I should add at this point, we also decided to do as much as we could ourselves. On April the 1st, 2007, we had a huge garage sale on the property as a fundraiser and to help us get acquainted with our new neighbors on Alvis Lane. It also gave us a chance to show off a model of the initial design by Dwight so that everyone had a preview of what would soon occupy the site. Dwight later made some grand modifications to the design to make it much more dramatic. What we have today. Then the old house was removed. Going, gone. We had a vacant lot to start with. Now this next group of slides was originally going to be a video, which we decided was too long, so I'm just going to present some of the contents from it. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the most important part. We had groundbreaking on April 15th and received our building permit in June. So we were really ready to go. So it started out as a dream, Dwight's model. The dream grows, or you start with a foundation. And it continued to grow, rising up. We had an early inspection by some of our church members. And I think you'll probably recognize some faces in there. And it grows still more. Finally, we had walls and a roof, and we decided it's time to get a little sweat equity into this building. We finished the inside of the foyer and the meeting room. We finished and painted the religious education room in bright colors with help from the kids. You see, they were all there participating. We painted the kitchen and installed cabinets. Those we had purchased ourselves separately and put them in. We decided on the stained floors, and everybody pitched in, getting ready to do the staining. As we did, finishing the outside. A lot of people up there on ladders and getting up in the air. The end product was worth the effort. How wonderful indeed. In 2008, members and friends contributed the final items needed to open, like 100 chairs, so we would have adequate seating in our meeting room. Interior furnishing, some new and some used, like the altar table, the foyer credenza, among so much other stuff that was brought in. We knew we were going to be successful when Jackie Russell and Jane Miller gifted us with the piano. You know, this doesn't happen when I rehearse. So we put light bulbs in all the sockets and toilet paper in the bathroom. And finally, on May 18th, we had our first Sunday service. We called it Celebration Sunday, and celebrate we did. After preparing the meeting room, we tied the doors closed with a ribbon. As people entered the building, we had them queue in the hallway and handed out hymnals. Then White cut the ribbon, and we processed into the meeting room singing. I can't even say that out loud. We gathered for the first service, and afterwards we danced, as we often did, and Let It Be a Dance was played. Back in the old days, Thea, as soon as that came on, she'd get up, lead us in a dance. On October 25th, 13 days to the day after our first small meeting in Thea's room, we dedicated the building, which we now call home. We had an outside service and then service inside. We settled into our new building and continued with our Wednesday night forums and Sunday services. We started working on church improvements inside and out to make it more comfortable and attractive, just as you would do if you moved into a new house. Next chapter is maturing. This is kind of a bunch of odds and ends. From the beginning, we had wanted to build as green as possible with the objective of earning a UUA Green Sanctuary designation. That means we've taken care in building the building to think of the environment. So we used the best insulation we could in the building walls to save energy. We had a metal roof so we could have a water catchment system, which was installed soon after we moved into the church. We used this for watering landscape. We installed solar and battery-powered parking lots. We had a gravel-based parking lot so we could minimize the impervious ground cover on the property and allow rain to soak into the ground rather than run off. This, by the way, proved to be a popular playground for cutting donuts, which still goes on today. As the result of this effort from the congregation, we did receive our Green Sanctuary accreditation. We needed a sign out front to let the world know we were here. But being in an R2 zone neighborhood, we couldn't put out the giant electronic sign we wanted. So we opted for the large, but rather inconspicuous sign on wheels so that it is portable that we have today. Mind you, that sign is on wheels. Of course, it hasn't been moved in the 15 years we've been here, but it meets the zoning requirements of not being permanent. We did some landscaping. We made a playground for the children with thoughts of adding an even larger playground when we could. We continued cleaning up the property and adding landscaping like seating area in back with regular member work parties. Those went on many, many weekends. Squeezed into this long, narrow lot, we eyed the mostly empty lots next to us. We discovered that the lot to our north was in two parts, and we bought the vacant back part from the owner, directly from the owner. The front part at that time had a small, decrepit house on it. It eventually became available and was purchased by Jackie Russell and Jan Estes. The house was offered free for removal, and after it was gone, the church purchased the lot from them. A memory garden was created to memorialize our members. It was called that to avoid permitting requirements if it were called a memorial garden. It was constructed by church members with help with Dwight. First stones were laid in 2013. I kind of need to rush. Recognizing that many people had contributed significantly to our development, the board created the Thea Award for Exceptional Service to CCUUS in 2012. Awarded to Thea to begin with, but to others since. Children's RE and childcare have always been a valued part of our church, with parents and volunteers over the early years. But recognizing the importance of professional skills, we then hired our first paid DRE. And they generally have the order of 5 to 6 kids in RE during that. We became active in the community with many outreach ministries that continue today: Meals on Wheels, SOS Food Bank, Habitat for Humanity, Family Promise, the Interfaith Welcome Coalition, Community and Schools Backpack Program. We do a lot. We also rented the building to outside organizations with values similar to ours, and sometimes at near zero rent, as a way to support groups like Narcotics Anonymous. Our building is a popular performance venue for concerts. We have good acoustics, thanks to Dwight's research and installation of the sound baffles. We've got the Chamber Music Society that comes here monthly, and also the Piatigorsky Foundation sends concerts here. We celebrated the 20-year anniversary of our first meeting in Thea's living room in 2015. As a part of that celebration, our name was officially changed from CCUUS to UUNB. The new name was chosen to avoid having to make the contentious decision of whether to call ourselves a church, a fellowship, a society, a congregation, or whatever. Next chapter is growing. Our treasurer had strongly encouraged the congregation to make extra donations during the early years in our building so we could make extra principal payments. The congregation responded, and we were able to pay off our promissory notes in July of 2019 and had a burning of retired notes. We had tried to purchase the vacant back of the property to our south, but without success. When that property finally came on the market, it was purchased by a member, the house was removed, and then the land was gifted to us. Our DRE, Jessica, took the position in August of 2016. Since then, our kids' RE attendance numbers climbed to an average of 12 to 16 before the pandemic. We were bursting at the seams in the RE room. Which prompted us to consider plans for expansion. We had a proposed RE addition on the southwest corner of the building. We completed the design, priced it, but never figured out how to build it. Our history just says that we hired our first quarter-time Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Ade Gaba, in 2017. There's so much behind that simple statement that it begs expansion. 2 regular congregational meetings were intended to make the decision. But the second became so contentious that the then president called a halt to the meeting and declared a negative vote. The majority of the congregation didn't accept that result and called for a special congregational meeting to reconsider. The result was a vote to proceed. I include this because it emphasizes that the congregation always makes the final decision. We then went through the suggested hiring process, advertising, the opening, the interviewing, all of that, and made a final choice. That was, of course, Reverend Ade, who is under contract and delivered her first sermon in October of 2017. COVID. At the beginning of 2020, we began to hear of this illness called COVID-19, not realizing the impact it would have on us eventually. The board decided we needed to end in-person meetings and meet via the online application Zoom, which we did entirely for 2020, the rest of 2020 and much of 2021. Certainly not the same as in-person, face-to-face. but it did allow us to maintain some much needed contact. Zooming entirely from home, the congregation sorely missed service elements like chalice lighting, music on the Steinway, and all of that. So we had our first Zoom service from church on October 24th, 2021. We did this for some time. During the pandemic, we maintained virtual RE and childcare sessions with Jessica and offered outdoor special events, keeping the RE families connected as much as possible. Post-pandemic, we still have most of those people involved, and our RE attendance is steadily increasing in numbers again. It's averaging 5 to 7 school-age children in religious education, and another 5 to 7 younger kids in childcare. Through the years, our Superstar Religious Education Committee has supported Jessica and the previous DREs through thick and thin, including transitions between DREs and rebuilding after the pandemic. Without them, there wouldn't be any kids RE. As the pandemic waxed and waned, the board took a cautious approach to opening the church. We met first with face masks and vaccinations and all of that. We even had the church separated for a while between adult sections because we could be in here with vaccinations. Kids couldn't be vaccinated yet, so we separated the two groups. The 2 years of COVID certainly had a major impact on UUNB, I guess, most notably on children's RE. We went from needing to expand our RE space to needing to fill it again. Adult attendance, once we reopened, was also down, as were Sunday donation, earnings from rentals, and sales of ATV cards. So finances didn't look too good. And guess what? We're not alone. Many churches, not just Unitarian Universalist churches, but other denominations as well, are suffering. But we're in a rebuilding mode now, and we can undo the damage. I hope this slide ride has been a walk down memory lane and a source of pride to you longer-term members at what we have accomplished through our determination and faith in our future. And for the newer members, I hope it gives you some inspiration, a picture of the work it took to make this church happen, and a vision of our possible future. On to the next chapter. Oh, I forgot to mention this. We have, from the very beginning, been an honor congregation. We have paid our fair share dues to the UUA every year since we became a UUA congregation. Thank you.